You're watching BreakThru News.
I'm Charlotte Thun-Hohenstein, and you're watching BreakThru News on BTR Today. Today we're talking about the world of modern dating, online and offline. And joining me to discuss this is Chris Hudspeth, a writer at the Thought Catalog, and in particular, the author of the article 7 Dating Trends That Should Stop Immediately. His work has also been featured on College Humor and HuffPo Comedy. So, Chris, you wrote this article, 7 Dating Trends That Should Stop Immediately, and they list several different things. Refusing to label relationships, indirectly insulting people on social media, pretending not to care about the other person. What is, in your opinion, the most egregious offense?
The absolute worst has to be pretending not to care about the person that you're actually trying to be romantically involved with. Just, taking a long time to send text messages, being blasé and carefree about everything. It's just kind of pointless. And I'm sure it's something that's been going on before our generation, but it's just such a terrible concept. And we have different ways nowadays with technology and the way we communicate. We have different ways to go about pretending not to care, and they're all bad.
So well, first of all, I guess if you actually don't care, then you actually don't care. But I guess what you're saying is when you do care and you just want to appear aloof for the sake of it.
Absolutely. And how do people, identify which it is? Now you have to worry about, if someone's playing a little bit hard to get and doing these things just to get you, to see how far you'll go, or if it's someone who's really not into you. And it's hard to tell the difference between the two.
Don't you think that sometimes, and I completely agree that if someone is deliberately pretending to be aloof, it's kind of obnoxious the minute you can tell that they're doing it deliberately. But don't you think that sometimes creating a little bit of mystique around oneself makes the other person want you more, or do you think that's completely overrated?
No, I think mystique is good. There are a lot of ways to be out there. I think you can learn a lot about a person from social media. We have a luxury of if there's someone you kind of know, you can just go to their profile and there are various profiles, Instagram, Facebook, etc., and learn a little bit more about them. So to try and be a little bit mysterious, I think is a good thing. But I think there's a difference between leaving something to the imagination and just kind of taking 16 hours to text back purposely. I think there's a difference.
Okay, fair enough. I could agree with you on that. So two big trends from the 21st century in terms of dating are online dating and speed dating. What I find interesting is that it seems like online dating, in general, has become much more normal. People are much more comfortable about it. But in particular, Tinder seems to have broken that barrier of embarrassment, and people, especially I think 20-something, people in their 20s, people who would be uncomfortable admitting that they might be on eHarmony or Match.com, seem completely happy to talk about Tinder. With no shame at all. Do you find that surprising?
I do, but that's for sure the case because I've had people tell me they're on dating sites and it's always a little bit hesitant, yeah, I did this thing and I'm on this now. But with Tinder, just the other day, someone actually was showing me, because I'm not too familiar with it, but just the other day someone showed me and he's yeah, you do this and you scroll through, and he's telling me about how you can go to nearby cities, even expand your horizons on who comes up. People are really open about it, and maybe it is because it's on your phone and it's almost just this little app thing, and it doesn't feel like an official online dating website. Maybe it's because it doesn't have a membership with a fee. But for whatever reason, Tinder, which I think is kind of geared more towards a hookup culture, is something that people are pretty open about.
Yeah, I think what you're saying, the fact that it is on your phone and that it is an app is huge, because it does feel like a game. And your phone is a more personal thing for you. Actually, there was an article in The Guardian about how, or claiming that the enjoyment of Tinder is actually just as much, if not more so, about the process of playing Tinder than whatever eventual hookups come out of it, which I find that very compelling.
It's probably accurate in some way.
So one of the other things that you mentioned in your list of 7 horrendous dating offenses is the fact that we're always interacting via text. Like 90% of the time, we interact via text. And I agree that obviously that's not ideal, but I just wonder if it's just a practicality issue, because who has time to spend that equivalent amount of time face to face with the person? No?
No, I mean it's definitely easier. I'm probably a hypocrite anyway because I hate phone calls. As soon as my phone rings, I cringe. So I'm like a huge hypocrite on it. But I do think texting like has become just like that's the only means of communication, and that's so difficult when it's like when we're talking about the courting process. If you're just trying to keep in touch with buddies, or it's a good way to keep in contact with your family, or and not have to be on the phone for an hour with your mom. It's beneficial in that way. But when you're trying to like get to know someone and be romantically involved, I just find that like such a difficult. It's so impersonal. And myself and I've had friends. It's so common to have miscommunications that are unfortunate, that are just a result of someone not being able to gauge your tone or how you mean something. And I think that's just it's something you have to be really careful with as far as like texting and dating.
Well, we are going to take a quick break, but we'll be right back in a moment after this quick excerpt from the latest episode of Live Studio featuring Speak.
Circles in your eyes, but I won't let you die twice. 'Cause if this is what it takes to make us feel ashamed, I won't live my life again. 'Cause I know the only thing I want.
We're back with our discussion on the phenomenon of modern love and modern dating, in particular online dating. Chris, so a lot of people will be quite cynical about online dating and say, that it makes us more superficial in the way that we approach this, because of course the profile picture is perhaps just single-handedly the most important thing. Do you think all this cynicism is unwarranted? I mean, obviously that there is a lot maybe to be cynical about if you're romantic, but do you think people are maybe going too far?
Probably, because I mean, if you think about it, even in real life, a lot of the time when you're deciding who you approach, it's not based on personality, it's just based on you see an attractive person. So, I mean, the only difference is that a profile pic is usually like our peak, as flattering as we can possibly be. But I mean, I don't think it's much different. So I'm not sure that online dating as a whole deserves a lot of the criticism that it gets, because I mean, a lot of the process is exactly the same. It's just done over the internet.
Yeah, I mean defenders will say that it basically is still playing to these human instincts that we have. And actually there was an experiment done, and again this was in the article in The Guardian. There was an experiment done where they took 3,000 people, assessed them all individually, and then chose from them 500 couples based purely on psychological compatibility. And the result when these couples actually met and went on their first date was that 90% of them decided on whether or not to go on their second date based on looks. So, I mean, even if you take out, as you're saying, that digital component, we're still at least coming at it from a pretty superficial place in the beginning.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Let's talk about 3D dates. So now there seems to be a lot of trends around dating, making it more fun, more crazy. What do you think about these? Like prankster dates where people might go to a marriage counseling session as a joke where they only actually know each other's first name. Have you ever done any sort of crazy, almost experimental dates, or do you think they're maybe a bit distracting?
I wish I could say that I have, because they sound awesome. They sound fun, and I think we're kind of like, we've gotten boring with dates. Everyone I hear like goes to movies, which I think is a terrible first date because you can't communicate with the person at all. But I think it's a great concept. We have like, a cliche basic dates all the time, so it's great to switch it up and do like some spontaneous, adventurous type thing. I'm not against it. I haven't done one yet though.
I guess I would maybe suggest I put this to you, that the key is something that's not going to completely overwhelm your interaction with this person the first time you're meeting them, right?
Yeah,
'Cause as you
absolutely.
say, I mean, in the same way that a movie, even though that's become completely conventional and cliche now, in a movie you can't actually really talk to them that much. So you
Right.
want something that's a little bit distracting so that there's not all this pressure on you guys, but that still allows most of it to be about getting to know each other. Does that sound?
That sounds ideal, actually. Yeah, just that little distraction to take away, the anxiety and nervousness that everyone has with a date. Because you're both going through this weird situation, like a marriage counselor type thing. Like you're both going through this weird experience, and you're so focused on that you don't have to worry about, all the stuff that you worry about on first dates.
So what's your ideal date?
Because I'm very boring, it's probably something like going for a drive. I really like going for drives, or I live in the desert, so hikes, stuff like that would be fun, ideally. Um, but I haven't. I mean, I would not be against some of those spontaneous, the 3D, like the crazy idea dates. I just haven't explored that.
Wow, well, something to have on your shelf.
Absolutely. No.
So right before we finish, one more question. What do you think is the most important thing to remember when you're going on a date with someone else? Because they can be kind of nerve-wracking.
Oh, I think it's always going to be nerve. I don't think you can get rid of that. Probably my big thing is to try and communicate and try and actually listen and like get to know the person, because you're freaking out so much, or at least I mean I think people who are nervous because you have that. I think it's easy to just not be paying attention and to be thinking like the whole time they're speaking, you're thinking, how do I look and how's this going and all that stuff. And I think it's important to just make sure you're communicating, you're speaking and you're listening to what they're saying.
Well, we're going to have to stop there. Thank you very much, Chris, for joining me. We'll be right back in a moment after this quick excerpt from our most recent edition to Serious Business on BTR TV, featuring Pile, presented by Exploding in Sound.
He stood in the face of the cave and only sat down for a while. Our bones covered in dust, he had no control over his
Thank you everyone for tuning in. I'm Charlotte Thun-Hohenstein and this is BreakThru News, your window into today. Be sure to check out breakthrouradio.com through the weekend for our continued trending week coverage, including Zach Sheps's analysis on what Puerto Rico can tell us about the relationship between national debt and inequality. That's it for what's breaking through the news today. Tell us what's breaking through your world on Twitter @BreakThru Radio. I'm Charlotte Thun-Hohenstein and thank you for joining us.